Hi, my name is Priyanka Shah. I'm a freshman at the University of North Texas. And I made a small video documentary / interview of my teacher on global warming. I feel like global warming is interesting, like a little curious topic for our generation, because as days go by it becomes more noticeable, more important, more people start talking about it. And getting a professional's opinion on it is certainly a better way to look at it. And I think it's part of our nature to be curious. Hi, I'm Priyanka Shah, and this is Dr. Wolverton, and we're going to be talking about physical geography and global warming. So, I have a question. What do you teach in your class?
I teach what is current science in terms of the atmospheric, ground, and ocean data that speak to whether or not there is climate change ongoing right now. I try not to tell people what to believe. Instead, I try to describe why earth scientists think what they do and let people decide for themselves what they think based on that information. And as a result, I also try to present some of the contrary points of view, even if they're simply political points of view, so people can be exposed to them.
And as I hear Dr. Wolverton talk about how climate change has become political, it irks me that our world has turned into some kind of game. The truth and the facts and the opinions and everything have been mushed together in a pot, and now you don't even know what to trust. We don't know who to listen to, we don't know what we're eating. Anything can be a lie. So I asked my professor, is climate change really occurring?
I think climate change has always been occurring during Earth's history for 4.5 billion years. I also think that during the last several 100,000 years there's been lots of climate change related to glaciation and ice age. But one of the things that gets really problematic is there's even diversity in terms of what people think the age of the Earth is. So it's important when I teach about Earth history to be respectful of that. From a geological point of view and a geographic point of view, I do think the Earth is old, and I think there's great evidence for that.
So I go out and ask people, what is global warming to them?
I don't know what is true and what is false about global warming, because there's so many people who are presenting so many different ideas, some coming from politicians, some coming from scientists. I recently watched a documentary in which they showed a little bit of a conspiracy almost about how it can both be true and both be false.
I mean, global warming is us humans destroying the environment to make it more adaptable for us, but less adaptable for animals and nature itself.
As a direct result from climate change, people were more responsive to political efforts, referred to it as rising sea levels.
I think global warming is one of, not the most important issue as far as the human race goes. We can live comfortably. We want our children to, and our grandchildren to. So we have to act now, thinking of them, like generations before us did. We're all we're immigrants. I'm an immigrant, and my parents made a huge sacrifice by leaving Mexico and going to Canada and coming here. So we have to do the same with our planet. I love soccer, yeah, and I want my children to be able to play soccer, and my grandchildren, if they want to. I want them to be able to play soccer like me, because it's just, it's a part of life. You can be alive, but if you're not having fun, you're not doing the things you like to do, you're not living.
We have grown 3 times from 1920 to 30s, and our forest cover has come down to less than 5% from 35%.
Oh. 35 to 5,
Yes.
less than 5.
Now you ask your father, you ask your mother, you ask your grandfather, how much water used to come in the taps in their times, in your grandfather's time? in your father's time, in your time? What was the quality of air in your grandfather's time, then your father's time, and then your time?
That the rate of warming during the last couple hundred years, particularly the last 100 years, and even more within the last, even more within the last 50, has really increased rapidly, and it relates to greenhouse gases, and these things all correlate. So that's what concerns me. There are multiple signs that the Earth is warming up. I think the debate is on whether or not that's natural change or if humans are having a big impact on change. So the more convincing lines of evidence for me are very direct measurements of sea surface temperature, for example. That's a pretty direct measure of what's happening on the surface of the globe. In addition, we do see increased concentrations in the atmosphere of greenhouse gases, many of them more effective at absorbing and re-radiating radiation back to the surface than CO2, which is the common one that's mentioned. The greenhouse effect is a very good thing. Without it, we wouldn't have life on Earth. It provides us with an insulation layer in the lower atmosphere that allows us to have it warm enough down here to live. What's of concern is the idea that when you add insulation to that layer, you provide the opportunity to conserve heat. We should expect to have more insulation in the atmosphere when we take fossil fuels that have been deposited over millions of years and combust them and release them all at once into the atmosphere.
Then it goes back through the water.
Well, as we've discussed in class, it can come down into as carbon rain in the oceans and become carbonic acid, but it also, a huge mechanism of recapturing carbon is the use of CO2 in photosynthesis. And so that's why there's a large concern over forest cutting. We call that carbon sequestration, the ability for the planet to consume more carbon back into its ecological cycles. The issue is that when we add carbon to the atmosphere from sources that aren't part of the current plant cycle, we're adding extra. So the rate at which we do that should be of concern. But it's not only CO2, it's methane, it's nitrous oxide and other sources of greenhouse gases that can absorb infrared radiation. These are all of great concern to a high number of scientists.
So I'm just thinking, this is not just a concern for scientists, this is a concern for everyone. This is our world, our home, and there are people out there that really care about it. I believe there's hope. We can change it, we can fix the problems, or we can slow them down. Because I like this place. So I asked my professor, what do you want your class leave knowing?
Well, one of the things that I've settled on in my teaching is that I think all these things are the case in terms of global warming. But that's, in one way, that's my perspective, as it's my choice to be a scientist. And so one of the things that I try to convey is that we don't need there to be an environmental crisis in order to care about our planet. And I think that's a stronger message, that regardless of what you think about the science of global warming, or regardless of what you think about policy or politics, all of us, many of us, even when we did the show of hands at the beginning of the semester, consider Earth our home. And so we should take care of it. And there are so many different problems we face environmentally, and global warming is just one of them. So I do have hope, because most people recognize that everybody wants to live in a clean environment. I think it gets tricky with how will we solve those problems as a society, and that goes through our political system. So how we vote and who we vote for. But I do think there is hope, because particularly this generation of students seems to be willing to negotiate those tricky boundaries and to figure out for themselves, how can I care about the environment while also caring about other political issues that matter to me?
We have thought of a new situation which is called ecological tourism.
All I can say is I can do my part in not wasting the resources and the values I have now, and hope for the best.
No way I could really deny that these things are happening.
We need to protect Mother Earth. So yeah, we just had little bugs here running around, and we love them. And we want to keep the little bugs. We don't want them to go away.
We would try to innovate ourselves to make it more friendly.
There's much hope ahead of us.